Randomly, for no particular reason at all, I decided to try my hand at Apex Legends, and what I've played is a mixed bag. I was either having the time of my life playing this game or absolutely sucking, which is fine. It's fine. To be honest, I haven't really been interested in any shooter games since Call of Duty Black Ops 3 in 2015. I spent way too much time in that game. Regardless, we're looking at an 8 or 9 year gap between the last time I played an FPS to today. So I'm a bit rusty, no doubt. However, I am going to critique this game, and I want to make it clear. I don't think you necessarily have to be good or great at the game to critique it. On one hand, being good at a game either means that the game is simple or you've spent more time with it and thus may have a better sense of what is in the game. However, I think that if you are sort of a professional and sort of really good at the game, you may be blind to some of the flaws that the game may have. Just might be something that you may not notice. On the same line, you might notice more flaws because you are more intimately into the game. Full transparency though, I suck at this game. I'm like laughably bad at it. I'm getting better though. Turns out spending time in the firing range before jumping into a real game actually helps quite a bit. Who would have thought? The point is, I want any fanboys of this game to know that because this is a critical analysis, I'm not going to hold back on a couple of these points. That wouldn't be genuine. I take issue with how a lot of free-to-play games out there work, and Apex Legends is no exception to this. Firstly, I think it's important to establish what makes Apex Legends unique and give it an identity. There are a million other shooters out there and tons of Battle Royale games. So what did Respawn Entertainment do to make Apex feel truly original? Well, one thing they did was trios. Trios are the main way to play Apex. This differs from most Battle Royale games in that typical games have squads or duos as their main kind of hook. I think Apex hit a sweet spot with trios. In each match, there are 20 squads of 3 players for a total of 60. For the size of the maps, I'd say it's just about perfect for the amount of players. Like any other Battle Royale game, squads compete to eliminate each other until there is only one left standing. Pretty much everything beyond the base formula of the game is somewhat unique to Apex. Apex Legends takes inspiration from the hero shooter subgenre of FPS games, and this is nothing new. Basically, you have like heroes, in this case they're called legends, that all have different abilities. Typically, some have passive and active abilities alongside an ultimate ability. This is pretty standard stuff. We've seen this in games for a long time. Overwatch is famous for it, and hey, Call of Duty did it for a while, so go them, and Valorant is another great example. Suffice to say that plenty of games utilize this concept. Apex gives you a handful of these legends to start with. My personal favorite is Pathfinder. He's a little quirky robot guy that doesn't take things too seriously, and I enjoy his playful nature. I mean, come on, look at this little guy, huh? I mean, well, he's maybe not. He's not that little. He's actually quite tall. Well, anyway. Each legend has their own unique skins, quips, banners, and a backstory. It's kind of neat reading through each backstory to figure out who they are and what their goals are with competing in these games. Oh, yeah, I guess it's kind of worth mentioning that Apex Legends is some kind of like a sport. I don't really get it. I'm not going to pretend to know the lore because frankly, I don't give a shit, but it is a neat setting. Having the games be like some kind of competition rather than the ultimate deathmatch makes things a little bit more like believable. Like, am I really supposed to believe that dozens of people dropped into a random spot of the world just to kill each other for no reason? Doesn't make sense, but Apex tries to contextualize such an event, and I think that's pretty fun. Sorry, back to the legends. For the most part, legends are fun and interesting to use. As I said, Pathfinder is my favorite, but a close second would probably be Rampart. I enjoy her deployable cover and minigun. It's really fun stuff that can be used to choke an enemy into an area while you're giving your teammates some good defense. Beyond this, I haven't really played the others too much. I don't like that there are so many locked behind a paywall or behind some challenges that you can only compete during a specific time of year. For example, I started playing at the end of Season 20. Rampart was a legend that you could play for free during this time, but if you wanted to unlock her completely, you could do some challenges. I didn't know these challenges existed, so I didn't complete them because the season was like over in like a couple days. And dear God, I just don't have the time for that kind of shit. Thankfully, you can avoid paying for legends by simply leveling up. When you level up in Apex, you get a certain number of legend tokens. Sounds like a name of a new crypto scam. These allow you to unlock new legends as well as a couple of other things in the shop. It costs about 12,000 tokens just to get one new legend. At rank 13, I had about 6,000 tokens, and this is all for one legend. You can test legends out in the firing range for free, sure, but you have no idea how much you'll actually enjoy a legend until you're actually in the game and you've purchased it and you're playing with it. And if you don't like what you got, tough titties, no refunds. Gotta go up another 30 levels or so to get another one. Have fun. But the game is free, right? So what is there to complain about? Before I get too deep into the things I dislike about the game, I need to take a step back and tell you a few more things that I do enjoy. I do like the shooting mechanics in Apex. Fortnite is like the only other Battle Royale game that I kind of got into, and even then I kind of got half-assed into it. I got into like mid-2018 toward the end of Season 4 and quit by like Season 6. It just wasn't my thing. I felt the shooting in Fortnite took like very little skill and was like piss easy to do. Could be a spicy take, I don't really care. Of course, the building was like fucking annoying, so there's that too. Apex takes a little more skill to get down. Your weapons almost have laughably low rounds in each magazine. That kind of forces you to either find extended mags on the ground or just, get better at shooting. Or both, because someone else in your game has definitely found better extended mags and is better at shooting than you, and they're coming for you. Shooting is fun overall. I like the way the guns sound and feel to shoot, and I like the overall variety. So far, some of my favorite guns are the triple take, I just like long-range weapons, and the rampage. I especially love that the rampage can be heated up using a thermite grenade to increase its firepower. That is really cool. And of course, the wingman pistol. Other guns are fine, but a couple just straight up suck. I don't really care for them. Most pistols get ignored just by how useful they can actually be in certain combat situations. They have the fastest handling, so it's just probably faster to switch to your pistol than it would be to reload, but that's like FPS game 101 right there. Every game does that shit. A classic mechanic that all Battle Royale games have is forcing players to use whatever tools they can find on the ground to succeed. This adds a level of randomness to each game and, by extension, ups the skill gap quite a bit. You might have some really good gear, but if you don't know what any of it does or what to do with it, you're going to be in real trouble by the end of the match, or in my case, the beginning of the match. Something else that Apex does that I enjoy is an emphasis on teamwork. No two players in a squad can be the same legend, so it forces you to pick a variety of legends. Typically you want some kind of support, maybe a controller or an assault to go along with it, or a recon or a skirmisher if you're feeling a little bit more frisky. Now, I know most of these words mean nothing to you guys, but you could probably deduce what each of these words means just by, grammar and English. Support focuses on healing your teammates, control focuses on controlling an area, and recon tends to, you get the point. It makes sense. There's something genius that all Battle Royale games do that just kind of ticks deep in your brain like a biological level, giving certain items rarities to ensure that you feel super hype when you get your hands on something good. Apex pretty much ensures that you can get your hand on at least one or more epic items per match. Epic is purple colored. You can also get legendary, which is yellow. More often than not, though, I find these items to be largely useless to me, mainly because I suck at gunfights and I'm going to lose it no matter what I do, but it's still useful stuff while I'm running around hoping I don't get shot. Like I said earlier, I'm really bad at this game, but I don't think it's entirely my fault, and this is just copium, so bear with me. There are tons of factors working against me that I simply cannot control. Of course, things I can control are like my aim and learning the mechanics and trying to gain a better understanding of how to work with my team, but beyond this, there isn't much else I can do to get better other than watch some YouTube tutorials on how to get better and try to put those things into practice. Maybe sell my soul to EA, but those things are otherwise largely out of my control. This game has been out for over 5 years now. As such, it has a very well-established player base. Many people who play the game are quite good at it and understand the mechanics in and out, far more than I do. This is the nature of any online competitive game. However, most competitive games have a system that allows newer players to, how do I put this, not be absolutely stomped on every time they play a fucking game. And there's good reason for this. Why would anyone want to play a competitive game if they're always going to be fighting people who have been playing the game for years? They would almost always lose. That crushing defeat over and over again would drive away 90% of the new people. How does Apex counter this? What does Respawn Entertainment do to prevent this sort of scenario from happening? Well, it's pretty clever if you ask me. You see, they simply don't. They don't counter it. I was blown away with this innovation when I discovered it too. It throws you into the ring and just says, good luck, which doesn't really work well in the game's favor. Sure, you could try your hand at the various game modes that pop up in the mixtape or whatever. It's a constant rotation of different game modes that are basically just ripped off from Call of Duty. You have your team deathmatch, you have your gun run, which is just gun game, and you have control, which is just domination, and you get the point. These are just Call of Duty game modes with an Apex twist. One could very easily argue that Mixtape is the place to go to hone your skills at the shooting, but I disagree. Mixtape has preset loadouts. You aren't picking up various pieces of loot to then go on to fight people. It isn't exactly analogous to the actual Battle Royale experience. Sure, care packages can drop in Mixtape games, but most are kind of overpowered compared to what you'd find in the actual Battle Royale experience. It's for this reason that I don't think Mixtape is enough to train someone for the big ring. It just doesn't do the main game mode justice. So, what other options do you have? Well, you can always warm up in the firing range. I've found that this generally works to a point. You can have a combat bot set to full combat and they'll attack you sort of like a player would. You can even randomize what level of armor they have. Taken together, this can kind of give you a fairly realistic expectation of what you'll be going up against in the ring, but again, fighting these dummies isn't like fighting real players. It just doesn't compete. They can fight back, sure, they can even chase you, but it's just not the same. Players are much more spastic, much more likely to think ahead. All of this is to say that Apex does a pretty poor job of making new players feel welcome. You almost have to have a friend who already plays the game and wants you to join them if you're going to have a decent time at it. Playing with randoms is either like a moderately okay experience or a complete shit show. Most people don't think about what they're doing or where they drop. As a new player, I tend to try to avoid high activity areas when dropping into a game. This is so I can find good gear with my squad away from all the action. It does have its drawbacks, as some lesser known places don't always have the best loot. You essentially have to choose between almost always dying at the very beginning of a match and then maybe going off the grid a little bit and finding some lesser loot out in the middle of nowhere. To be fair, you might land in a high activity area and do a good job and get some really good loot and avoid a lot of that enemy traffic that you could otherwise die from, later because you just don't have the good gear. But 95% of my games with randoms ends at the first encounter with an enemy squad. Is that my fault? Most of the time? Probably. Maybe. All I know is I'm usually not the first one to go down. It's usually my teammates who get caught up in the action because they either rush ahead with no care or forethought, or they just get unlucky and happen to stumble into an enemy. This loop of joining and dying over and over again really makes it hard to stay motivated while playing this game. Most people don't like to lose over and over with no progress to show for it, but in some ways I do. I like Souls-like games. Elden Ring is easily my favorite game of 2022 and maybe one of my favorite games of all time. Souls games are notoriously hard, and if you're new to them, they'll be a test of your limits. You'll know pretty quickly that whether or not the game is for you, and you should just maybe get a refund. However, those games are single player for the most part, and you're not really worrying about an ever-growing competitive community that's just been around for like half a decade. You're worrying about a set of boss moves that was programmed. You're essentially dealing with an active puzzle that has limits. You just have to find those limits. With a competitive online game, those limits can take on a very different form. You're not fighting the same person over and over again. It's different people with different tactics. It can be almost impossible to learn good strategies if you have nobody to help you learn them, nobody to guide you along the way. And if you're just dying over and over again, how are you ever supposed to put them to the test? Does this mean that Apex is a bad game? No, not really, not at all. I'm just bad at the game. However, I think it's fair to critique a lack of skill-based matchmaking system. Skill-based matchmaking, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is a system that basically puts similarly skilled players into the same matches to ensure that there's more or less an even playing field. This can be done in a multitude of ways, such as checking how many games a player has won compared to how many games they've lost, how many times players have gotten kills compared to how many times they've died, how long they last in games, etc., etc. The list goes on and on. In some games, like Call of Duty, people hate this shit. And I think that kind of makes sense for COD. COD isn't like this super competitive game. It has a competitive scene, sure, as do most online games, but the core COD audience is just there to stomp noobs and drop nukes. That's Call of Duty. Having a skill-based matchmaking system is extremely important. It ensures that new players aren't thrown in with players who are level 423 and spend all of their fucking free time playing this one game. My point is, any player actively wanting to get into Apex is going to have a really tough time because of the massive skill gap and the shitty matchmaking. I have experienced warming up at the firing range and then hopping into Battle Royale only to die within the first combat encounter way too many times. And this happens even when I plan all of my steps carefully. There's just a high likelihood that I'll run into some sweaty fucking nerd. Full offense, by the way. One or two really good squads can wipe out an entire lobby because of how broken this system is. I think there needs to be more casual forms of Battle Royale. If they don't want to change the matchmaking process, then they at least need to offer alternatives. Mixtape isn't a real solution, as it doesn't really do anything to prep someone for the real core experience. In reality, it just offers some kind of change of pace if you're bored of the main game. That being said, 3 Strikes is a game mode where each of the 20 squads has 3 lives. You have 3 chances to get things right. This means that death, while bad, isn't an instant game over. You can lose a combat encounter or 2 and still manage to pull out of it. This is a really good game mode. It allows players to get a feel for the core gameplay without being absolutely demolished the moment someone so much as fucking sneezes on them. If Respawn decided to make 3 Strikes a permanent game mode, I'd be really happy. Apex so desperately needs casual appeal because as of now, it's really hard to break into this game. Something else that makes it hard to break into this game is the microtransactions. And you know what? In my opinion, the term micro in microtransaction has pretty much lost all fucking meaning. What used to be a couple of bucks for a skin or two in a gun back in like 2013 has become like $40 fucking for a legendary gun skin. $40 to make your gun look different, something that you will only see. This is absurd. It doesn't help that if you don't want to pay for a legend, you have to grind for all of them. It would take you literal fucking decades if you don't play this game as your full-time job. Every single one costs 10 bucks worth of Apex coins. And can I just say something? Free-to-play games with like 3 or more fucking currencies just stink of overcomplicated bloat meant to try to steal your money at any fucking chance. They cram these things down your throat every chance they get. Some of these things are unlockable via crafting materials, but others are store-exclusive items that you cannot use otherwise. Take this sweet Pathfinder skin, for example. You cannot unlock this in the game right now. You could have bought it in Season 20 for like 25 bucks worth of Apex coins, but there is no way to unlock this in the base game. If you like this skin, you are forced to buy it. There's no other way to do it. There are tons of items like this in the store. It would be one thing if it was just like gun skins or legendary outfits, but no, it's like almost everything. Little fucking emotes, tiny ass animations, melee weapons, and just so much more. It does not stop anywhere. This game is clearly meant to be a continuous cash cow for Respawn and EA. Respawn hasn't made a new shooter game since Apex Legends, and it's very clear that EA values this as a cash cow more than an art piece. And it's just sad because I don't know if Respawn will ever make a cool game again. I despise microtransactions for a multitude of reasons. They are deeply anti-consumer and are designed to suck every dollar out of your wallet. Essentially, free-to-play games use manipulation tactics to get you to pull out your wallet and start forking over that money. That sounds a bit absurd, but I promise you this is well-founded stuff. We'll start with loot boxes. It's no secret that gambling is a bad habit and that can cause people to lose tons of money really quickly. And if you're an insane adult with any sense of value of money, you'll know that buying anything like a loot box is a fucking scam that manipulates your brain for a quick rush of dopamine. You open a box and you get a cool legendary skin of a character and you feel pretty good about it until you realize you don't have that legendary character unlocked and you have to pay another 10 bucks for that. Essentially, the devs are tricking your brain into buying more and more of these to get more and more dopamine. Just one more box and you might get that legendary skin you want. Even I get a rush when I get something cool from an Apex pack. As time goes on, maybe these boxes just don't hit the same, so you gotta spend more, get more. The thing is, I'm never paying for one of these. I might buy the season pass if I feel like it's a good enough deal. It's not. But outside of that, I would never pay for a skin. And even then, looking at the stuff in the season pass, it just doesn't seem like it's worth the $10. It's not that I can't afford 10 bucks every few months on this game, it's just that I don't want to do that, nor should anyone. They even have the audacity to let you pre-order the next season's pass. That's insane. You have no idea what the next season will be. You have no idea if you like any of the new content that's coming out, but you're encouraged to buy it anyway? That's nuts. What if the theme of the next season isn't your thing? Maybe it's not about whether or not you particularly like the content in the season pass, it's about the fear of missing out. FOMO, as it's called, is the fear of missing out. Battle Royale games use this a lot in their marketing tactics. You want this cool skin? You gotta buy it now because you're never ever gonna see it again. You may not get this stuff back, and it would be a shame if you didn't have it. Come on, don't you want to like fork over 40 bucks for a gun skin? This is a pretty nasty manipulation tactic, and it's frankly insulting to anyone with a brain. I suppose Apex is more oriented to teenagers or adults, so I don't really feel as bad about it, but like games like Fortnite that have a larger audience of children get no sympathy from me. It's downright evil to manipulate your player base into fearing of missing out on certain things because they have work or other things to do in the day and they don't want to spend their hard-earned money on a fucking video game. Any dollar spent as a result of the manipulative marketing tactics is a dollar wasted and a dollar stolen in my eyes. For example, Season 20 had a really cool Pathfinder skin. Yes, I'm back on the Pathfinder skin. I'm sorry. It was available in the shop and was called Search and Destroy. I seriously considered getting it because it looked really fucking cool. But then I looked at the price. And it was 25 fucking bucks. I can never justify that. Hey there, this is Future Garrett. I was editing this video and I realized that there are tons of indie games that you can buy for like 25 bucks rather than buying one of these stupid little skins. So like for example, you can maybe spend like 30 and get Minecraft, of course. You could spend 15 and get something like Terraria. You could get something like Animal Well, which just came out, which is 25 bucks. You could spend similarly another 25 bucks getting a game called Big City Little Kitty, which is another indie game that just came out. Fuck, you could get Lawn Mowing Simulator, I think for 30 bucks or 20 bucks. There are tons of games out there that you can buy for the same price as this skin. It's insane. Anyway, back to the video. Even worse, it was a skin that had already been released in the past. Like, cool, I get that people want to have the old classic favorite skins back, but you just kind of devalued it for everyone else who had it, no? It was sold back then under the guise of exclusivity. Additionally, the store claimed to have it at a reduced price, down to 2,500 Apex coins from 3,600. Which is complete bullshit because when the skin was originally dropped, it was 1,800 coins back in 2022. They're using the shittiest tactics to get you to buy the stupid fucking skins. It's really common for stores online to list an item for a reduced price while not actually reducing the price at all. For example, let's say you want to buy a computer from a company, right? On their website, they have the original price slashed out or some gray color that's kind of faded, and then they have the new price in big bold colors. When you look at other websites for the same item, you'll find that the reduced price is actually just the real price, and this company was just lying about it so they could trick you into buying it. It's awful. It's insulting. And sure, you could argue that much of what Apex has to offer can be unlocked through various means like crafting materials or legend tokens, but the amount of time it would take someone to get all the materials for these things that they want is absolutely absurd. Which you could argue that there's value in putting in the work, and I could see that if Apex didn't so heavily push buying these things for instant gratification. The effort isn't rewarded, the buying is. In fact, I would argue that the effort is actually punished. They make the bottom of the barrel, low effort skins dirt cheap so that normal people like you and me have something that they can cling to. But it doesn't work. We know that we're using a common skin, and so does everyone else. I'll never be as cool as those legendary skin users that you see at the top of the menu when you customize your favorite legend. Speaking of those skins, they're all just retextures of each other. Like nothing's new. Like let's look at Rampart's legendary skins for a sec, which you can technically unlock for free if you grind long enough. Okay, so we have these two, which are just copies of each other, and then we have these two, which are just copies of each other. This is laziness. This is all a trick. If you want a cool, unique skin for your legendary, well, you gotta fork over like $30 or more. It's really sad to see. As much as I may want to buy the season pass because the stuff in it looks really neat, I know that I would be contributing to this manipulative marketing scheme that I just cannot get behind. Not to mention that the cosmetic items don't really add anything mechanically. It just doesn't sit right with me. I'd much rather spend my money on a fucking pizza to eat with Emily or even save it up for a nice plant for our apartment. It's just not a business tactic that I can support. And even if I protest the game, nothing's gonna change. Respawn can't make things free or cheaper because they have deadlines to reach and profit margins to maintain. And this leads me to the biggest point of all. Apex Legends will die one day. It's a live service game that frankly came about during a fad that has, in my opinion, overstayed its welcome. Battle Royale shooters were a fad of the late 2010s. Most are kind of losing their popularity, trying to branch out or are tied to some reputable franchise like Call of Duty. What happens when it dies for good? There is no single player content to keep Apex going. Someone could spend upwards of $100 in this game and lose out on all those achievements. What is the point of buying these random skins if you don't even get to keep them as a reward for when the game goes? What is the point of buying all these random skins if you don't even get to experience them when the game is shut down? Of all your efforts and all your achievements, what happens to them? They go away just like any other game, but with these free-to-play live service games, there is a monetary loss that is tied to the game shutting down for good, and it will happen. Those things will not be there forever. Hell, even if the game doesn't die for another 5 years or more, it's very likely that you yourself will stop playing it. I stopped playing Fortnite after buying the Season 5 Battle Pass. I bought the Season 6 Pass too. It got nowhere with it because the game just got fucking boring for me. And I have a feeling that Apex would be the same way. I like first-person shooters. I enjoy them. I like guns. I'm American. It's in my blood. Guns are cool, and I think Apex is some of the best gunfights in any modern shooter, but again, my experience is limited. If two players who are fighting each other are evenly skilled and leveled, it might be a really fun time, but so much of this game is just tied down by the cash cow aspect of it. That being said, Apex Legends is free, and the studio needs to get their money somehow. I understand the reasoning behind all these microtransactions. A studio cannot solely rely on donations when there's no incentive for the player base to donate. There has to be some kind of reward for donating. I understand that. They gotta feed their families. But some tactics they use are just downright cruel and evil. For example, several years ago in 2018, it came out that EA and several other companies were working on patents to make algorithms for their games that would intentionally put players down if they didn't pay for microtransactions. They would accomplish this by putting weak players who didn't pay for anything against overpowered players who did. This was all done in the effort to try to make them buy something. This is just straight up evil, like diabolical, cartoonish levels of evil shit. They're trying to force you to either quit or spend your money. Now, do I have any proof that EA is actually doing this stuff with Apex Legends? No, but I do find it odd that Apex came out only a year after all of this stuff came to light. If Apex uses some kind of system like that, which I wouldn't be shocked if it did, I would never buy a fucking damn thing from this company ever again. They are actively belittling and fucking with their players just to get them to buy content that is overpriced and impermanent. The moment Apex Legends stops being profitable, I have no doubt EA will cut it as soon as possible. So just be careful playing games that are designed to manipulate you into buying things. Granted, with the season pass, you can more or less earn all those Apex coins back that you spent, and you can afford the next season pass for free. If you work hard enough and dedicate tons of time to it, that's what you can do. It's not like you can trade them all for actual money anyway, though, so it's just still money lost. I have about 20 hours in Apex, and I'm only level 13. I have like 6k Apex tokens, and it would probably take me another 20 hours minimum to get the 12k needed to buy just one legend. 40 hours. That's 8 hours a day of just playing this game straight. That's a full-time job. I don't think I have the time for that. I don't think anybody does. And I don't think anybody should do that. All in all, I think Apex could be a fun game. When I go up against people of similar skill levels, I find that the game is a fast-paced, challenging shooter, and I like that. It's got some really good feeling combat, and the gameplay loop can be fun if you happen to get into the right circumstances. But again, it's just too held down by these microtransactions and broken matchmaking for me to seriously recommend it to anybody. I certainly cannot recommend a game that actively tries to manipulate its players through FOMO and shady overpriced junk. It's just not something I'll do. I don't recommend you download this game, especially if you're younger. I'm 23, so I have like a little bit of knowledge on this kind of stuff, but if you're like a young and impressionable teenager, never play this kind of game. This game is meant to actively harm you and get you addicted to gambling. It's no different than shitty mobile games. It's just not good for anyone to partake in this kind of content. Spend your money on games that you and maybe your friends will enjoy playing together. Games that will last you for a long time, and don't try to belittle you and insult your intelligence. But if you do enjoy Apex and you want to see it improve, who am I to tell you what to do? If you think the game is good overall, then why not support the devs in their work? You and I just likely have different perspectives, and that's okay. If you want to spend 20 bucks on the season pass and a couple of legendaries here and there, that's fine, and you're justified in doing so. I still think you'd be insane to pay $40 for a gun skin, but you know what? You can waste your money however you like. At the end of the day, though, I can't help but feel like we should support companies and dev teams that respect our intelligence instead. Recently, popular Nintendo YouTuber Arlo declared May 9th to be Indie Day, and I think this is a really cute idea, and I hope it takes off. Indie games and indie art in general deserve more love and attention. The gaming industry right now is in shambles, and these indie games and companies are holding it up right now. We're seeing massive layoffs, perhaps the biggest one in years, and tons of companies are canceling projects. It was just a few weeks ago that Square Enix, the company behind the Final Fantasy games, canceled tons of projects, losing about $140 million. That's insane. A few days before writing this, Xbox closed several studios it had recently purchased. Some of those employees went to other studios, sure, but the rest? Nah, get shit on. See ya. Your art isn't worth our time because we didn't see those record high profits. For everything that Nintendo gets wrong, and they do get a lot wrong, they get at least one thing right, and that's the treatment of their employees. While other massive game companies are laying people off, Nintendo remains strong. It wasn't too long ago that then president of Nintendo, Satoru Iwata, took a pay cut to ensure that Nintendo employees could keep working. The president of the company took a pay cut to keep the business open. That shit never happens in other large companies. And even though it's sad that my expectations of corporations are so low, I was still pretty impressed. Any other company would have just said, well, gotta trim some fat, gotta let some people go. But Nintendo recognized the talent and how important it is for the artists to stick around. You start laying people off, you not only lose those artists that you fired, but you also destroy team morale. The remaining employees fear for their jobs too. After all, if someone I've worked alongside for years could be so easily written off, who's to say I'm not next? Why am I working for a company that doesn't value my fellow artist? And these are all really good questions. If I was a programmer at some big AAA studio, I'd be seriously worried about my job. So when Respawn Entertainment and extension EA, of course, drop a new season of Apex Legends with some new currency called shitbucks that allows you to buy fucking gun skins for $40, I'm not interested. I'm not excited. I'm insulted. Screw them for thinking that I'd be so naive as to want something like that. It's pathetic and hurtful. I miss the days when you could just buy a game and it would be stable, creative, and filled with artistic expression and not microtransactions. I know there are studios and games out there that still do things right, and this is because they respect their fan base enough to actually recognize that you can't treat us like shit. After all, some of us would just leave. It's getting rarer and rarer, but there are still some good studios out there. Apex Legends could be an amazing game, and I do love that it's free. I just hate that it's so hard to get into because of the various mistakes plaguing the game right now. I don't know how much more of it I'll play, and I think I'm okay with uninstalling it if I need to. It's not the worst game out there, but Respawn is not getting my money anytime soon. Thank you so much for watching this video. I wish I could say I had fun getting the footage for it, but I didn't. You could just ask Emily how many times she heard me yell from the other room. I did, however, enjoy the writing process of this video. I got to talk about some things that I haven't talked about before on the channel. If you enjoyed today's video, you should consider subscribing and becoming a member. Becoming a member is just $3 a month and gets you access to all of my videos early and all of my live stream VODs, and you get your name at the end of my videos. It also just helps me keep a steady stream of income, as YouTube ad revenue is very inconsistent at best and downright awful at worst. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching. What are your thoughts on Apex Legends if you play it? And what are your thoughts if you don't? Are you gonna get it? Probably not after this video, but anyway, that's all for today. Bye bye.